Hi, I'm Stephen Horn. With me is my naturopathic doctor, partner, and friend, Kimberly Dallas. And what we're going to do right now is talk about some ideas about the coronavirus itself. I've done some stuff on building your immune system and everything, but Kim has been doing some research on this, looking into this, and I want to start off by saying, number one, we're not going to give brand name products so as to not get any legal hassles over that. And two, we are just putting out kind of the theory of what makes sense. As time progresses, we'll find out, develop the information more. So please understand that we're not saying, hey, this is the answer, because nobody has enough experience with this to really say definitive, like this is the answer. So with that in mind, Kim, why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with this whole coronavirus pandemic thing?
Staying at home. Just kidding.
Well, I'm in my office, but there's nobody else here, so I'm not.
Right. We've been doing limited hours too, and no in office. But I would just I know we did another little piece of information on this a few weeks ago, but like everybody else, we're finding out new information as we go, and this is evolving, and what information is being sifted to us that we can use. So I just thought it was good that we should update, because I wasn't, just knowing what we knew then wasn't super happy after finding out more stuff. They just thought that we could evolve this for some people and just keep progressing on it with different preventative techniques, with different parts of science that we have, with different theories that we have coming up as the new information is given to us.
Okay, great. Even though one person just sent me today who claims to be a medical doctor, and I didn't see a way to verify whether she was or was not a medical doctor, says she worked in a hospital in Massachusetts, says there's a lot of young people getting this, and it's really, really dangerous, and everybody's going to get it. So far, I haven't seen any real good information indicating that that's the case. The information I've seen that seems to be coming from what I would consider to be reliable sources, saying that the 84% are mild to moderate cases. About 15% people who get this virus that we know of seem to become. We're not testing everybody, so we don't know who has had the virus and didn't really have a reaction to it at all. But 15% need medical care, and about 4% die. But most of the people who seem to be dying and requiring medical care have comorbid conditions. That is, they are already sick in some way. Their immunity, their health is compromised in some way. So it seems primarily, at least what I've seen in the things, to be affecting the elderly people. Not that there aren't some young people with it, but what have you been seeing with all this?
Well, and what I'm seeing, okay, so firsthand experience, I have actually only had a couple of patients that have been confirmed positive testing that are now quarantined that I have been working with. So, and they are very mild because, first of all, they were following nutritional plans and they were on a supplement program. They were exposed and had been through a really big stress time at work. So I'm sure their immune system was compromised from being stressed. But they're handling it really well, and they're not having dramatic symptoms from it. They came back with a positive test, but they said they barely had fevers and very little lung stuff. So I think preventative, as far as catching it prior to, is going to be a lot of what we're going to talk about today. What I'm seeing theory-wise, okay, so this is my hypothesis that I want to put out there.
Right.
I'm curious, because when we look at a lot of the people in China and European countries do smoke. Okay. I just would like to see some numbers on the people with the serious lung issues. How many of them were smokers? That
I'd like to
could
see that
play
too,
a little bit, but I don't know if we'll ever see that. So it's just something, that's on my brain, putting it out there. My other thing is, with all of the talks, all the stuff I do on cholesterol, all the blood chemistry stuff I do on cholesterol, I see cholesterol as part of the immune system. So every single cell in our body is made up of cholesterol. We've looked at some different things in this virus that I'm understanding from some different scientific standpoints, that it requires a surface tension, if you have dry skin, it cracks. It tends to crack more. So, but if you put lotion on that and you have an emollient, then you don't get the cracked skin. So this virus is looking for for not exacting, but for an analogy, a drier surface or a tension on that surface so it can penetrate the cell. And this is like
it can attach to it and then from that penetrate it. So if you're saying if the cell membrane is in a healthy state, then it's less likely for the attachment and the injection of the virus to take place, right?
And that's what I'm understanding. So my analogy is it's like this little screw and it has a battery pack on it. And it's going to sit there for that 28 hours, that allotted amount of time they've said that it becomes in this active phase to penetrate the cell. And it's going to try to screw into the cell. If it penetrates that cell, it disassembles and then reassembles with parts and pieces from your RNA and DNA and then exits the cell and proliferates other cells. So how do we create that surface tension? And I'm looking at cholesterol. So a lot of people have put this out there, with the whole proliferation of this virus and how it replicates and processes. I would love to see how many of the people that are really not recovering have low cholesterol or on statins, because that really affects our immune system. So if you have a healthy cholesterol, or even, for me, my healthy cholesterol numbers are going to get lots of rantings and ravings from doctors because I like it around that 225 for people for a proper immune function.
Which, by the way, is a range. My cholesterol is actually sitting in between 200 and what I've had it tested between 200 and 225, which they say is high, but I look at it and go, that's not nothing.
Right, which I consider normal, right. And I even see even some postmenopausal women a little bit higher. And then I look at now with trends, women are running a little bit higher cholesterol, but why are the women carriers and not contacting this virus as much as men? So I've just got questions here that seem to have little bridges that could be built to them and try to find out information. Well, I'd also like to know how many people are on statins, how many people that have actually contracted this, become sick with all of the symptoms and have had a difficult time recovering, if recovering, are they on statins? Because then we're driving this protective factor of our immune system low.
Yeah. Well, you were the one who introduced me to the books by, let's see, what's his name?
Yufi Raffinosky.
Yeah. And one of the things he talks about is that when you have an infection, your cholesterol elevates because it is part of the immune response. It's part of how the body carries away things. Also, the cholesterol elevates in response to environmental toxins to help your body bind the toxins and carry them out of the cells. And I learned from you that low cholesterol is a thing that gives you a higher cancer risk because you're exposing your body to more toxins and more, therefore, a lessened immune system. So I believe you're right. The cholesterol is part of the immune system. Now, whether that's the factor or a factor or whatever, we don't know at this point. But
I don't know, but it is a question that, and we probably, quite honestly, with the pharmaceutical indoctrination of the statins and that being reported, we may never see anything that cross-relates to that. We may never see anything that cross-relates to some of the blood types, because I feel like our B blood types, which would include going into the ABs, are a little bit more susceptible to viral components. Another factor I look at too is in the blood chemistry. It's really interesting because a lot of times in the CBC, the white blood cell is usually not as affected with viral circumstances, but in this one, it's even driving the white blood cell count low from the few cases I've seen reported and studied on their blood that was put out. And I also read another study on that in one of the medical journals. So it's affecting our white blood cells in a really different way than most viruses too. So I just have questions there, and a lot of them are unanswered, but it's just something that the little squirrel in my brain goes round and round on the little roulette and it ponders.
That's, that's an image I have of the squirrel in your brain.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so look, one of the things that they've talked about with this is that the way this virus kills someone is with a cytokine storm in the respiratory system that causes rapid fibrosis. So for those of you who don't understand what we're talking about, the body responds to all initial damage and so forth with an inflammatory process. The inflammatory process is what kicks the immune system in gear, performs sequestering action to try to prevent the spread of whatever has caused the damage, and call in for the appropriate immune factors to try to clean up the damage and so forth. In a situation where you get chronic inflammation eventually leads to fluid buildup in the tissues and a buildup of the fibrin, which causes it begins to decay the actual tissue because the inflammatory process does not reverse. Okay, so you go, you have hepatitis and then you wind up with cirrhosis of the liver. You understand that? I'm saying that right, Kim?
Right. Yeah, and then when we look at that cytokine storm, and you talked about this before, Stephen, it's not the virus that kills you, it's your immune response, of how it responds appropriately or not. So that we were looking at that with some of the cytokine stuff too. So when those little cytokines get released in there, they're supposed to, like the little surface receptors on the T cells can cause this cytokine storm. So it gets activated by these antibodies, all right, that we're looking at. So those can cause some of the cytokine release on different cells with normal immune response. But the more potent on the human T cells are, like from those little monkeys, is how the transmembrane amino acids are and how they're causing a sustained response with the T cells. So that contributes to more of like this activated immunological synapses on the surface of the T cells, and how it binds and how activation occurs and how the adhesion of these molecules on the surface respond too. So we're back to some of that surface reaction on the cell. How is it responding? And then once this production, all these little cytokines go into their little capillary, when you have endothelial damage, it's little capillary leak syndromes, then we've got a whole nother response going on here that you can even go into organ failure.
Okay, so I'm going to try to see if I understand and translate that into English.
Please translate.
Well, cytokines are inflammatory messengers. So you have little intracellular chemical messengers that either upregulate or downregulate inflammatory responses. So when we're talking about a cytokine storm, we're talking about the cytokines being upregulated dramatically, right? And therefore, the immune response is actually hyper reactive.
Yes.
And therefore starts causing damage to the area in which that is taking place, right? And
right,
that can cause damage and failure. So what are some of the strategies we do for like helping to reverse that kind of inappropriate immune response to something?
Stopping the storm. Yeah.
What? Yeah. What would be was some things that would stop the storm? Basically,
stop the storm.
Yeah, stop the storm and help get things back to being kind of normalized.
Well, a couple of things. So we were looking at this beta glucan study. Okay, so they increase the host immune defense by activating like this complement system. So it enhances like the natural killer cell function without overreacting the cytokines. So there's several, there's a green study done on this severe cytokine storm where there were higher levels of the pro-inflammatory cytokines, including the interferons. That's what I've been reading on this particular COVID-19 is this interferon reaction. So we want something that is going to work with a natural interferon production. So we have things like N-acetylcysteine. We have things like ashwagandha will do that with the gamma interferon. So a lot of times those have been looked at they're called chemokines, and that's been detected in these high influenza infections. So it's not usually this whole cytokine storm that's going on isn't something that's usually observed in like these seasonal and milder flu situations. So the severity of this is coming because of that storm. So using things like the beta glucans. Another one I looked at is larch tree bark, which is arabinogalactin. And that activates the T cells and the macrophages and the natural killer cells.
For those who don't understand, beta glucans are one of the major things Canadian beta glucans is a lot of the medical mushrooms.
Yes.
Have varying amounts. We're talking about maitake mushroom. We're talking about reishi organoderma, cordyceps. These the chaga. Yeah, the chaga all have beta glucans, which have an effect on the immune system to basically help the immune system to function better. Now the ones that are higher in beta glucans can be problematic in autoimmune disorders, but the ones that are a little bit lower seem to do fine, in terms of modulating immune responses. That is, getting the immune response to be appropriate and balanced. Cordyceps is one of those. Ashwagandha, well, isn't based on beta glucans, but it's also an immune modulator. It's modulating immune responses, so the immune response is appropriate.
It's under the interferon.
That's why you can use it in something where the immune system's deficient, like cancer, but you can also use it on immune disorders because it's regulating the immune response rather than just stimulating it, upregulating or downregulating it. Am I correct?
And the ashwagandha goes back to the interferon more so than the beta glucan. But with an interferon and the N-acetylcysteine, the way I'm looking at that, just from what I'm trying to understand on it, almost prevents like the adherence. Like once you get that interferon circulating, not only are you diminishing like this cytokine storm, but you're also preventing adherence of the actual virus with the cell, like we were talking about. So that was part of the benefit of the interferon.
Yeah. In other words, if you can get the cell membrane so that it is not attracting and allowing the virus to attach to it so that it can penetrate in the cell, you've basically negated the ability of the infection to spread to the cells, right?
Right. And then there's a broad range of a lot of benefits from a lot of phytonutrients. So even that act as antioxidants, inhibitors, some of them that act against several different cytokines, or the amplification even of this cytokine storm is ginger, and that's pretty readily available as a food source, capsule, as a tea, a warm tea. So that's a huge one with the COX-2, that excessive production of the nitric oxide, the PGG.
Ginger is anti-inflammatory, but it also is stimulant, a little bit expectorant, and so it would help to calm down a hyperreacting immune situation.
Right. And then we're hearing a lot of stuff about vitamin C's. Okay. There's a lot of cofactors on that for numerous biological reactions. It plays a really big role in this neurotransmission of the neuromodulation too. So it's also, bacterial killing, viral, some viral, but it protects you from that oxidant injury of the offset of this cytokine storm. That's what we're looking at.
In other words, because what happens in a chronic inflammatory state is you get a lot of oxidative damage to surrounding cells.
Exactly.
Because
and that protects the mitochondria better with the vitamin C.
And I just got a message from someone today was saying that there were a number of doctors who were trying to promote to the CDC using intravenous vitamin C with people with COVID-19.
And I did see one, it was a news post. I haven't validated it, but that one hospital in New York was doing the IV vitamin C drips. So hopefully that's true.
Okay, because it's going to interesting to see. It would be nice if we could finally get some of these natural things validated that they actually are helpful and some good information come out about it, because
Right.
we tend to run to the drug side and to the vaccine side and everything, and the effect of nutrition and natural phytochemicals on the cells in the immune system is often just completely overlooked because the money isn't there. I'm sorry.
Well, and personally,
I mean,
just for
I'm
me,
being very cynical when I say the money isn't there, but I think that's really why it's true. They don't look at that.
you made me drop my head on that one. So, personally, I went like when all of this started flaring up, and I knew we still had people in our office, and I do the infusions. Like I try to do them every 6 weeks or so. But I went and in my infusion, I put a hydroxy cobalamin B12. I put a glutathione, and I put the IV vitamin C in. So I went and got my lovely infusion and felt really good about that. So there's still, you can do them even if you don't have access to infusions or IVs. You can do it, just internally. There's some others that we could look at too. I know vitamin D is a big one too, because that the vitamin D receptors expressed on the B cells, the T cells, the antigen presenting cells. So those immunologic cells are all capable of synthesizing the active D metabolite and acting in an autocrine manner. So that is also going to modulate the adaptive immune response too.
The whole issue of vitamin D is one thing I've thought about, because we know that people are more susceptible to viruses in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
They're indoors more. They don't get out. They are not in as much sunlight, and vitamin D levels are lower in the winter. And so that may be one reason why we're more susceptible to viral infections in the wintertime.
In the winter, yeah.
We have a huge amount of people who are deficient in vitamin D. I mean, I've read estimates that 90% of the population does not get enough vitamin D.
Well, and I have another theory on that too. So, vitamin D is typically the only vitamin that can also act as a hormone. And when we've got all of these xenoestrogens and all of these chemical compounds in our food that are throwing weird hormones into our system through our food supply, then the vitamin D gets depleted from those.
So the basically hormone disruptors, that are xenoestrogens or other hormone disruptors that are found in a lot of our foods, either from agricultural chemicals or from other plastics or any of those.
Right. I think that's why our D depletion. Again, I'm on my theory horse today. Can you see it?
Well, right. I mean, what we're doing. Okay. Just again, to reiterate what I said in the beginning, in case you just are looking at this, to remind you, we're not proposing this is the answer. We are just talking about some of the things that we're looking at and uncovering that to explore, because obviously, if you are not struggling to breathe and you've got COVID-19, you're going to be sent home to be quarantined. What are you going to do? What kinds of things can you take to boost your body, to boost your immune system, to maybe help to keep this from, getting worse? And so I think it's worth where I think taking a little self-responsibility and learning a little bit how our body works and being able to boost our own immune system, or at least understand how to modulate our immune response, is a useful thing. So that's why we're having this discussion, is to kind of put forth some of these ideas. And we're not alone in this. There's quite a few medical doctors and other people who are looking at things like vitamin C and vitamin D and vitamin A and
zinc. Yeah, zinc is a good one for decreasing that oxidative stress with those inflammatory cytokines too.
Yeah, so these are fairly simple solutions that most people can readily get access to those nutrients, and you don't have to do mega doses. Just what would you say is a good dose for some of these things if a person wants to try something?
And that's where we have preventative. So even some of the mushrooms with the beta glucans, I'm not putting out there as preventative. I'm putting them out there as onset of symptoms, because some of the things that we look at in natural health for immune system aren't exactly preventatives. Keeping your biological terrain healthy, that's your preventative. So we're looking at different situations too, Stephen, with the pH buffering. Okay, so the lung is your first layer of your pH buffering. Well, a lot of people have very acidic diets. Stress causes acid buildup, maybe not as many of us are working out as much because we're at home, which creates some lactic acid. But the acid structure in the body, and I'm not talking about, going on this hyperalkalizing, but to bring the body to balance, with your pH, then you're not as likely to have a heavy hit on certain things by keeping that biological terrain. So in a preventative mode, we're doing smaller numbers of stuff, just putting supplementation in daily that maybe the person's not used to having. If it is something you're used to taking daily, maybe bump it up just a little bit more than your normal dose. Then we've got the whole, influx of symptoms, then we're going to get out the triple, the quadruple, of the different things that you're doing. Plus we're going to add more things like, your different mushrooms, your different higher potency beta glucan things like that come up. Then we were talking today, I was on another discussion today, and we were talking about, well, nobody's addressed recovery. What about post symptom? What about recovery? So I think we do a full circle on that you come back to the super high potency antioxidants, or, things like your goji or your astaxanthin, or some of the super high ORAC values on your antioxidants, because the terrain has taken a hit. So now you're going to have to recoup. And with this fibrinogen, this fibroid, this scar tissue, like this mucus buildup in the lungs, that's got to go somewhere. Okay, yes, you're going to try to expel through the lungs. So you're going to focus like cordyceps in a higher dose on the lungs. But then guess what gets to take up the slack for all that mucus that you're eliminating and all those oxidants? It goes to the gut. So I think our post-recovery is we have to really look at some good gut health, of detoxing, focusing on the small intestine, focusing on our prebiotic and our probiotics of, different intensities, to keep the gut healthy so that we're not getting the recurrence of this. Because technically, the way the body works is we should build an antibody to this that we have more immunity. But if it interacts with some more mucosal membrane linings in the gut and reattaches, it could, it's one of those where it branches off and it changes into something new. So now you've got an offset of it. So I think the whole mucosal membrane lining, all the way from the nasal cavity through the whole tube, through the colon to excretion, you have to focus on keeping that healthy for a post-recovery situation too.
Okay. So going back to what would you say is a reasonable dose of like vitamin D that people should be looking at for prevention, or maybe bigger for therapy?
I'm typically recommending the 5,000 IUs daily and doubling or tripling that if you have symptoms.
Okay.
Then on zinc, zinc usually is like a 25 milligram dosage. And I'm like, if you're already doing a multi or a mineral compound, you probably got some zinc in it. So maybe take an extra 25, but keep bumping that up if you start feeling symptoms.
Okay. Very good. Any other tips that you learned in kind of looking around and what you've been finding with your research?
Well, I'm really amping up the ashwagandha with people, because for me, what I'm seeing from a blood chemistry aspect and from daily interaction with people, the more we bump the ashwagandha up, I've got people upping that a little bit, and that's a really great preventative. The cordyceps a little bit with that as well. And I've been using the silver, but only as a nose spray, because it has to come in contact with what it's actually working on or adhering to. So only as a nose spray. I've also been recommending the ginger tea or warm water with lemon, just to keep the throat coated, so there's not a lot of intake there from, airborne stuff.
Okay, very good. Any other thoughts about what's going on? One of the things and one of the reasons why I like the recommendation of ashwagandha, I first got that from you, is because not only are you modulating the immune system, but a lot of people are stressed, right? They're nervous about what's going on. They're concerned about what's going on, and stress lowers your immunity. And so taking ashwagandha, making sure you're able to relax, that you're able to sleep, being positive, being hopeful, this message of we're all going to die, kind of attitude, is not good for our health, right? Even if there is a real threat to our health, the worst thing we can do is allow ourselves to get all stressed and panicked about it. And one of the ways that you deal with stress is just to do something positive. So doing something to boost your health, and then also just doing something maybe that's fun, just to keep your attitude and your mood up, like Norman Cousins when he recovered from cancer by watching funny old movies. Do something to help yourself be a little more lighthearted and so forth. I mean, that is, I think, a really good thing to do to just for this whole situation. Be reasonable, take reasonable precautions, but don't panic, don't get scared. Just, think carefully and be proactive in doing something for yourself. You have anything else?
And I think some of the uplifting too, to help create that joy, the essential oils are really helpful with that too, of diffusing those. And plus they have antiviral bacteria. So, finding something fun to do, keeping your environment, clean and sanitary. It's not overboard, but just using an essential oil. And, I have noticed though, I will say I've seen, more families doing stuff together and posting online, game nights, things like that. I've seen more people walking their dog than ever here. So, we have to look at some of the positives in this as well, of how it has created a different functioning communication in our environment, whether more people are posting online or interacting, FaceTime, or calling people you haven't talked to in a while. It has created a positive aspect of that. And we do have a positive aspect of all the people, of the numbers that have recovered from this, that's not really being put out there.
Yes, because there are many people who have recovered from it. And there's a possibility a lot of people maybe got it and had very mild symptoms and didn't even realize they were, that sick. And it's important always, I think, for everybody to understand that there have been pandemics in the world before, and we have better sanitation now than we had in the past. We have better understanding of disease management than we had in the past, and we therefore are better equipped to deal with this sort of thing than they were in the past. And even in the past, when they had some of these big things, the majority of people survive. And so that's why I tell people, don't be afraid, just be cautious, be reasonable, take good care of yourself. So
this is where we need that music coming in that says, don't worry, be happy.
Good point.
I can't sing. I promise it will make your ears bleed, so I won't do it. So, but you get the gist with the
neither can I. Okay? So I'm not going to torture people. My singing would not bring joy and happiness to people either.
Yeah, so we're going to have to hire some background singers, man.
Be happy. Okay. All right, everybody. Don't worry. Be happy. All right. And thank you for joining us. We'll look forward to talking to you again when you get more information.
All right. Thanks, guys. Stay well. Stay healthy.
All right. Bye.